Welcome. My name is Jeremy, and I'm just thrilled that you're here today and that I get a chance to share a couple of things with you this morning that I feel like God's been putting on my heart to share with you. So some of you know, sort of as a church, we're in a transition right now. We've been meeting here for 4.5 years, and in a couple of months, we're moving into our new digs. And so we're going to have our very first permanent facility, and it's not far from here. It's about a mile from here. And this fall, we move in. And so we're excited about that, but that means, we're sort of there and here, and we're kind of in between and doing some construction and stuff, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But my family's actually going through the same thing right now, which is kind of crazy, but we are sort of also in transition. We've been renting a home here for a long time, and now we're trying to buy a home, and so now we're thinking we're starting to go through the stuff. The stuff, like just the stuff in the garage and the stuff in the closet and the stuff in the attic and, all the things that we moved with 6 years ago and haven't touched since. And now we're like, okay, do we want to move it again? Like for no reason, so we're actually going through it and deciding what to keep and what not to keep and all that kind of stuff. So in the process, you come across things from high school, you come across like things that you had written or whatever. And I actually came across recently some notes that I had written, actually some song lyrics is what I'll call them. I don't think it was poetry, it was song lyrics, because I had in my mind I was going to be a rock star. And so I was writing these things down, and what had happened was I had gone through heartbreak. And it was heartbreak by who is now my wife. But at the time, she broke my heart. And so I had written this, from that perspective. And it's funny to read it because I was so convinced in that moment that she just didn't get it. Like, we're supposed to get married one day. Like, I'm 16, and I'm writing all this stuff. And she just doesn't understand it yet, Clearly I was right. But at the moment, she didn't know it. And so, I'm looking through this stuff and I can see this. But I remember thinking, like, in that moment, the future that I had in my head felt so impossible and so far away. It was like, God, like, what is going on? Like, this, she doesn't get it. Like, we're supposed to get married. Like, all this stuff's supposed to happen. And she, like, doesn't care. Like, God, something between what I'm experiencing right now and where I envision my future being is off. Like, there's a major difference between where I find myself now and where I think I'm going to be one day. And we're starting a series today that's going to take us through the summer on the life of Moses, this guy in the Old Testament who is kind of a key figure, and we'll talk about his life, but we're calling this series Promised Land. And what happens in this series and what we're going to talk about is sort of what I just described, and maybe you've experienced this, but where you're sort of in one place and you have this vision or this dream or this promise that's out in front of you that feels really distant and really far away and really impossible and just you don't know how it's ever going to happen. And this is where we pick up this story as we begin our series. But I would guess that if you're here today with me and you probably have something in your life right now, a promise that feels far away for you. There's something in your heart, there's a dream that you have, there's something that you're holding on to that for you feels like an impossibility at this point right now. For some of you, that might be a picture of marriage that is so far from what you're experiencing right now in this moment. And you're going, man, I don't see how it gets from here to there. It just seems impossible. It seems too far away. Or maybe there's a career path for you that you just right now, you're sort of on the bottom rung and you're going, how am I ever going to get to where I want to be? Like, I just don't see that happening. Or, there's some other relationship that just feels impossible. Or maybe your financial future is, you've got the Scrooge McDuck swimming through gold in your mind, right? But you're like pinching pennies today. And you're like, I don't understand how it's ever going to happen. How am I ever going to get to a place where I can afford to live, when I can pay my bills, when I can do all the things I need to do? Or maybe you find yourself single today or single again. And you're in this moment where you're going, this isn't necessarily what I had in mind. And you want to spend your life with somebody. Maybe that's a desire of your heart. But you're looking and you're going, there's not even a prospect in sight, right? It's like a barren wasteland. And you're just going, there's no way, right? I don't see how this could possibly happen. What I want to suggest to you today is that it's possible that while your promised land, while your dream feels far away, that it's possible that God is already moving right now and you don't even know it. That there's something that's beginning to click, there's something that's beginning to move forward and you can't even see it. So maybe for you, let's pick on you, single person, one more time. Not really pick on, but let me share with you this. Maybe you're here in this moment and you're going, God, there's nobody in sight. How could this be? And what you don't know is that he or she walked in the room and is sitting 2 rows behind you right now, right? Like, what? Some of you are looking over your shoulder, you're scanning, you're trying to figure that out, right? Like, you don't want to be too obvious right now, but you're like, maybe. And so, like, what if God is orchestrating things in such a way that in this moment, it feels like a distant reality, like there's no way this could possibly happen. And what you don't know is that God is already moving to put the pieces together. What if he is already orchestrating something for your future, but in this moment it's undetected? In this moment you can't quite see it. And that's where we start in this series today, because the promised land for the people of Israel, this group of people, felt like a distant thing. There was this promise that they had, and I want to read for you the promise. I'm going to talk to you about this because they grew up, this whole culture, this whole people grow up with the mindset that God has chosen us and there's some kind of a future established for us. And they don't know like how they're ever going to get there from where they find themselves to there. So they're holding out hope for this promise. And look at what the promise is. It begins in Genesis 12, and the promise starts with one individual. And the Lord said to Abram, leave your native country, your relatives, and your father's family, and go to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and you'll be a blessing to others. And I'll bless those who bless you, curse those who treat you with contempt, and all the families on earth will be blessed through you. So Abram starts out just a normal dude, kind of, he's okay, he's living his life, but God comes to him and says, I've chosen you, and through you, I'm gonna create a whole nation. You're gonna leave your, kind of comfortable place, and you're gonna go somewhere I show you. I'm gonna create a whole nation out of you, and through you, everybody on earth is gonna be blessed. Like there's gonna be blessing that comes through you for everyone. So that's the beginning of the promise, but look what it says then a few chapters later in Genesis 17. It gets real specific. It says, I will establish my covenant, God is saying this, as an everlasting covenant between me and you and your descendants after you, for the generations to come, to be your God and the God of your descendants after you. The whole land of Canaan, where you now reside as a foreigner, I will give as an everlasting possession to you and your descendants after you, and I will be their God. Okay, so this is the promise. This is what all the descendants of Abraham rest on. They all say, right from the beginning, God has promised us this land, this place where we're gonna go and we're gonna inhabit, and it's gonna be ours. And we're gonna establish ourselves there, and our descendants will live there. And so they're holding on to this promise. And so real quick, a little bit of history from Abraham. He has a son named Isaac. Isaac has a son named Jacob. And then Jacob has 12 sons, okay? And the youngest of his sons is Joseph, all right? So you might have seen Joseph's Broadway play. He's the guy with the colorful coat and all this stuff. And so he grows up and he's the youngest brother, and his dad shows a bit of favoritism. So his older brothers, all 11 of them, decide they don't like that one day. And they do what every sibling dreams of doing. They fake his death and sell him into slavery. All right? Like, if you could do this, you would have done it by now, right? With your siblings when you were younger. This is but they literally do it. They fake that he's dead. They sell him off to slave traders, and they go home and say, Dad, sorry, Joseph's done. Like an animal got him or something, And so what starts as sort of a tragedy ends up unbelievable, because what happens is Joseph goes off to Egypt. He's sold into slavery in Egypt. He ends up serving in, a high, powerful court where he kind of impresses people and eventually rises to power, where he becomes the second in charge of all of Egypt. Like, it's this crazy, unbelievable story. And Joseph is there in a powerful position. Now, years later, his brothers and his father, there's a severe famine. And so the people hear that there's food in Egypt. And so they go to Egypt to ask and to beg for food so that they can survive. Well, in the process, they come face to face with Joseph. They don't know it's him because it's been decades and there's this separation, but they come face to face with Joseph, who is the reason that Egypt has food. He has done all kinds of preparation and planning. God has spoken to him and he's prepared. And so his brothers show up and Joseph, of course, recognizes them. They don't recognize him. But there's this incredible encounter and Joseph ends up reconciling and taking care of them. And then the entire family moves to Egypt. Now that's important to know because this is how the Israelites, the Hebrews, end up in Egypt to begin with. They're there because of this moment. And they come and God provides for them through Joseph. And then these 12 brothers just become the most fertile men on the planet. And they have like hundreds of babies and like the Israelites start spreading like crazy. There's just tons of them all throughout. In fact, here's what happens because Genesis ends with the death of Joseph. Joseph dies, his position and power and influence is now gone. There's no longer a Hebrew and Israelite in power in Egypt. And now somebody else replaces him. And it ends with this sort of like, now we're in trouble kind of moment for God's people. And then Exodus, the very next book in the Bible, begins with this. It begins with enslavement. Look what happens. It's kind of a long passage, but bear with me. Let me read this for you. It says, eventually, a new king came to power in Egypt who knew nothing about Joseph or what he had done. He said to his people, look, the people of Israel now outnumber us and are stronger than we are. We must make a plan to keep them from growing even more. If we don't, and if war breaks out, they're going to join our enemies and fight against us. Then they'll escape from the country. So the Egyptians made the Israelites their slaves. They appointed brutal slave drivers over them, hoping to wear them down with crushing labor. They forced them to build the cities, Pithom and Ramesses, as supply centers for the king. But the more the Egyptians oppressed them, the more the Israelites multiplied and spread, and the more alarmed the Egyptians became. So the Egyptians worked the people of Israel without mercy. They made their lives bitter, forcing them to mix mortar and make bricks and do all the work in the fields. They were ruthless in all their demands. Okay, so we went from a position of power and influence and Joseph protecting everyone to now this, to enslavement. And what's happening is the Egyptians are going, there's too many of them. We gotta enslave them because they're gonna overthrow us. And it seemed like the harder the work got, the more of them they became. Right? And so it's like the men were working hard and they'd go home and they needed more back rubs than ever. And back rubs led to more babies, right? And it's like the harder they worked, the more there were. And it was like the Egyptians are like, what is going on? We can't figure this out. And so they're going more work. And the Israelites are just multiplying like crazy. And so they go this position of enslavement. And then it gets worse. Before it gets better. Then the Egyptians go, okay, here's the plan. Genocide. We're going to do whatever we have to do to get rid of these Israelites and to stop them from growing. And so look what it said in verse 22. It says, then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people. Every Hebrew boy that is born, you must throw into the Nile. Let every girl live. Okay, so the plan then is, this is how we're going to stop it. We're going to kill off all the babies, all the baby boys. And then we'll just breed out the race and we'll marry these girls into our families. And that's basically the plan. So you end up in this position. Here is this group of people. They've been promised a future. They've been promised a land of their own, an identity of their own, and God's going to be their God and we're going to be, his people and we're going to inherit this place and it's going to be awesome. And yet forced brutal labor, genocide. And here they are going, God, what is going on? The promise that you had for us feels a million miles away. The promised land might as well be on the sun because there's no way we're getting to it. Like this is impossible. And so maybe you find yourself in a position like that, maybe today, or you've been there in your past. And what you're experiencing in this moment feels light years from where you need to be or where you feel like God is leading you. And you're like, I don't understand how it's going to get there. The promised land never felt so far away as it does in this moment. In this moment, it feels like it's on another planet. It's in another universe. There's no way that it could possibly get there. Now, I gotta change gears just a bit. I promise we'll come back. But I wanna talk a little bit about football real quick, okay? So imagine, now you don't have to think very hard on this, but if there's a football here, okay? And there's some guys around that football. Eventually what's going to happen is somebody's gonna pick it up, right? And what happens when a football is present, there's something that clicks in the mind of most males, that they suddenly believe they are Joe Montana, Russell Wilson, whatever you want to do. Like guys just suddenly go, all right, and they kind of mimic and they do the drop back and they're like, okay, I got this. Like if coach would have just put me in, like I could have won state, right? Uncle Rico, they get this way. And they're suddenly, going, how much you want to bet I could throw this football over the mountains? And they're just like, they know they can do it. And every guy who doesn't have the ball suddenly becomes Jerry Rice, and they all feel like I could catch anything that's thrown to me, right? And you just see this happen. Like I'm telling you, if I'd put a football right here, it would just be chaos. Every guy would suddenly feel like that's who they are, and that's what they could do, right? And so they would just go crazy. And so here's what happens, guaranteed every time. Couple of guys throwing a football. It only takes a couple of throws before somebody says two words. Right? They say the two words that every guy says when they have a football. Anybody know what that is? Go long. There it is. Go long, right? It's like, I didn't plan that, guys. He knew that. I'm telling you, that is part of our DNA. And so what happens is we pick up a football and we want to just test our arms. We want to go, how far can I throw this thing? And so we just say, go long, right? And we're hoping our significant other is watching because we believe somewhere in us that if we can throw far, our significant other will love us more. Like that somehow matters. And so we're like, checking, all right, go long, and we're ready because we want to show off our arm strength. That's what we want to do ultimately. We want to see if we can do this and we want you to run. Oh no, that's not far enough. Longer, like go more, right? And of course, then we throw it and it like butterflies like 10 yards in front of us and doesn't go. But we try, we believe that if there's someone running, we can hit them. And the longer, the better. Go long because we can do this. And there's a phrase, there's an idea that I kind of was thinking through, and I don't have it on the screen, so just listen and make sure you write this down if you think about it, because this will kind of encapsulate what we're talking about today. But the greater the distance, the stronger the arm. The greater the distance, the stronger the arm. Now here's the point. Here, and bringing it back to where we're at, okay? The promised land never felt as far away as it did in that moment. When they're enslaved, when the genocide orders come out, and they're there in that moment going, God, this is about as far away from what you promised as we could possibly get. And I want to suggest to you today that when the promised land feels the farthest away, that God's just getting loose. That there's a moment that God is saying, listen, go long because I can't wait to show off my arm. I can't wait to show you how far I can reach, how far I can throw this thing. And I just believe that that's what's happening in this moment. And there's this interesting thing that happens in the midst of this, in the midst of the slavery, in the midst of the genocide, a baby is born. Right in the midst of the order that all these baby boys are supposed to be killed, a baby boy named Moses is born on the scene. Now, it's in a time when everybody believes the promised land could never have been further away than it is in this moment. What they don't know is that God is at work, and God is moving, and God has already done something to rescue them in the birth of this child named Moses. Now, look at what it says in Exodus chapter 2. It says, about this time, a man and woman from the tribe of Levi got married. The woman became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She saw that he was a special baby and kept him hidden for 3 months. Now, every parent thinks they have a special baby, right? Like we all believe our kids are cute, yours looks like an alien, right? I mean, come on. My child is a special baby. Yours, is maybe not so much, but mine, and so we think this, but I don't know what she saw that made him feel like look special. I don't know what the deal is, but she's, it was a special baby, and she keeps him hidden for 3 months because what? Otherwise, she's supposed to be thrown in the Nile River. He's supposed to be killed. But when she could no longer hide him, she got a basket made of papyrus reeds and waterproofed it with tar and pitch. She put the baby in the basket and laid it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile River. And the baby's sister then stood at a distance, watching to see what would happen to him. Soon, Pharaoh's daughter, now the big guy, the one in charge, right? His daughter comes down to bathe in the river, and her attendants walked along the riverbank. When the princess saw the basket among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it for her. When the princess opened it, she saw the baby. The little boy was crying. She felt sorry for him. This must be one of the Hebrew children. Of course, she knows, right? She knows what's supposed to be happening, but she sees this baby and her heart is broken. She feels sorry. Then the baby's sister approached the princess. Should I go and find one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you? So the sister, Moses' sister, right, comes and says, hey, I got an idea. Would you like me to find someone to take care of this baby for you? And she says, yes, do. So the girl went and called the baby's mother. Take this baby and nurse him for me, the princess told the baby's mother, and I will pay you for your help. Come on now, right? Moms, how great a deal is this? Like, you get to raise your child, you don't have to kill him, which is awesome, and you get paid for it, which is what should be happening for you. We all believe that. But so, she's getting paid. So the woman took her baby home and nursed him. It's like the best day ever. She started the day thinking, I'm like in desperation putting this child. I don't know what her thought is. Like, is she sort of not wanting to just throw the baby in the Nile? And so she sort of puts it in a basket, sort of like, maybe it'll float away and I won't have to see what happens. I mean, I don't know what her desperation, I don't know what her thought is in doing this, but she ends up with the baby back in her arms that she doesn't have to hide. She gets to care for, and she gets paid. It's like the greatest deal ever. So later, when the boy was older, his mother brought him back to Pharaoh's daughter, who adopted him as her own son. And the princess named him Moses, for she explained, I lifted him out of the water. So Moses grows up after he's old enough. He grows up in Pharaoh's household. And so you can start to see how, okay, I can kind of see this thing starting to move now, right? Because here is this child who's going to grow up in a powerful family, raised as though he's an Egyptian, even though he's a Hebrew child. And he's going to end up in a position, I mean, you can almost, like, it's foreshadowing. You can see where this is going. You can see that this child is going to be an important person. And here seems to be the desperation move, the thing that's going to bring about what everyone is hoping for. But again, nobody knows this, right? Nobody knows but Moses, and his mom kind of goes, okay, here's, she doesn't have the end picture in mind, but she's going, my son is alive, he's not dead. Here's a good thing that's beginning to happen, but everybody else is still, they're experiencing pain. They're experiencing all this kind of stuff. And what they don't know is that the answer to their prayers, the rescuer is already on the ground. He's already present. He's already growing and learning, and he's already moved into a position of power. Despite all of that, this rescuer is born. Now, for those of you who may be sort of seeing the dots connected here, you need to know that, one of the reasons Moses is such an important figure in the Bible, because Moses is sort of a precursor to Jesus. It's not the last time that a baby will be born into difficult circumstances, raised up, become a leader, and rescue God's people from bondage and slavery. Like, this is a pre-picture of Jesus, Moses. Because this is what Jesus does. He's born as a child, he's born and he's raised, and he's eventually becomes a teacher, a leader, and someone that people follow, and he says, follow me, and I'll rescue you. I'll bring you from this place of bondage, this place of brokenness, and I will heal you. I will set you free. I will forgive you. I will show you mercy. And for some of us here in this room, that's a concept that you're going, man, I've never really wrestled with that. I've never grasped onto that. For you need to understand that when your darkest moment, in your worst times, this same child who was born, this Jesus, is your rescuer as much as he's mine. He is the one who sets us free. And Moses is simply sort of a picture of him beforehand. It's one of the ways that when Jesus comes later, people recognize that God must be at work, because he did the same thing a long time ago with Moses, right? And so that you end up with all these comparisons in the New Testament to Jesus as the second Moses. He's this new guy that's coming in who's rescuing God's people once again. And that same rescue, that opportunity is available for you. If you find yourself today in a position of brokenness, you find yourself lonely, you find yourself guilt-ridden, you find yourself ashamed or feeling so far from God, I'm telling you, Jesus is the one who rescues you. He's the one who leads you out of that. And just like Moses will eventually do this for God's people, it's what Jesus does every single day for us. He sets us free. He leads us out of slavery. He removes the bondage from us. And he moves us forward toward what he would want for us. Now, here's the thing. You and I have a dream. We have a promise. We have a future that we're hoping for. And your job and my job isn't to make that future happen. Sometimes we get in this place where we feel like we've got to force it. We're the ones who have to sort of, make it all happen. And my suggestion to you this morning is that our job is not to deliver the promise. Our job is simply to be ready to catch it when God decides to throw it, right? Like our job is to be in position. When God says go long and we're running, our job is not to stop. It's to keep going. It's to keep running. It's to keep putting ourselves in a position to catch it when God decides he's ready to throw. And for some of you, you're looking back, you're going, are you sure, God? Because this feels really far. This feels really far from where I am. And God continues to say to you, nah, go long, deeper, deeper. I got this. And it feels distant. It feels like I don't know how this is ever going to happen. But I'm telling you today that your job is not to make it happen. Your job is simply to be ready to receive when God does. And your job is to keep going long, to keep being faithful, to go the distance, and to be ready when the opportunity presents itself. God wants to do something. The greater the distance, stronger the arm. The greater the distance, the stronger the arm. And as far away as your dream, your future, your promise is this morning, I want you to know that I just believe God is getting ready to show off. God's getting ready to demonstrate to you just how far he can throw, just how strong his arm is, just how much he can reach. And when it feels darkest, when it feels the furthest away, for this people, I'm telling you, right in the middle of that, God is already at work. He's doing things. He's protecting this child, this Moses, and he's incorporating him into the family of power so that one day God can use him to do what he wants to do. It's possible that right now in your darkest moment, that God is already putting the pieces together. And while you can't see it, and maybe you're not aware of it yet, there's something that God is doing. There's something that God is orchestrating. And I believe that for you. I believe that God is moving on your behalf. Now, let me talk a little bit about us this morning, because for those of you who call Story Church home, those that don't, welcome. I just want you to know that the next couple of minutes I'm going to talk to Story Church, and so don't feel bad about that. Just know that, and we are glad that you're here. We're glad that you get to listen. But what we have been experiencing as a church over the last few months has been nothing short of a miracle. Like, it has just been incredible for us as a church what we're experiencing. If you had asked me 3 months ago, what's the future? Like, I would get this question all the time. So when do you think you'll have a building? Like when is that going to happen? And my question was, or my statement was always like, man, it's not even on my radar. Like, I have no idea. As far as I was concerned, we would be a portable church. Like, I hate to break this to you, I kind of thought it'd be like a decade or more. Like, I just thought, like, we'll just keep doing this. Like, God right now has told us this is what we're doing, and so we're going to come here, we're going to set up church, we're going to take down church, and we're going to do that every week, and we're just going to keep doing that and loving our city and doing what we can to grow and to help people find hope. And yet, God was at work. And that's the crazy thing to me. We had no idea just a couple of months ago what God was already doing, what God was orchestrating. So then when I got, to have a conversation and someone said, hey, what would you think about taking over this facility and this land? I was blown away. And today, we stand here, literally today, every single piece of paper and every signature and everything was finalized, done, filed. And it's like we started doing stuff, And so, in fact, I want to show you a picture. This is some of the work that happened yesterday. So what is now the beginnings of sort of a lobby area was once a couple of rooms and sort of a narrow hallway. And we have just open that thing up. And so other parts of the building we started working on. And it's funny because at one point yesterday I walked in and we had gone to the dump for a couple hours and I came back and a whole lot more had happened. And I was like, wow, like we're committed now, aren't we? Like we're into this thing, like this is for real. And it was, it's exhilarating, it's fun and all this, but guys, just 3 months ago, none of this was even on the radar. And here we are today with a facility beginning to shape it, beginning to do all the things that God is going to, beginning to see all the things that God is going to do through it. We're on the verge of the promised land, right? Like we're standing on the edge. And yet if you had just asked me just a couple of months ago, it was like, that's impossible. There's no way. How would we afford it? Where would it be? We have no idea. Like the circumstances are so ridiculous. And yet it's like God just said, no, go along. I got this. And it's like, here we are today in this moment going, I can't believe it. And I just got to believe that for you, when you, like wherever you're at in your life, I know it feels impossible, but it could be that a week from now, 2 weeks from now, a month from now, you might be going, I cannot even believe what has happened. I can't believe the distance that we've traveled from point A to point B and how God did it. This is what God does. He loves to show off his arm. The greater the distance, the stronger the arm. And in a way we never could have dreamed or planned. God's been at work. He's been moving and creating space and orchestrating things to sort of make this moment for us a reality. Now, the truth is we have a huge task ahead of us. And we've been talking about this day and we've been building to this day because today is the first day that we're giving you an opportunity to really give toward this future. And we called this, our chapter 2 offering. And it's been this sort of sense that, what we've been doing here at the school for the last 4 years has been chapter 1, and we're getting ready to move into chapter 2. And we're so close. We're right on the verge of that, but there's so much still to do, and it's one thing to knock down walls. That doesn't cost anything, right? Destruction's free, and that's fun. The only cost is like pain in my back right now, and sweat and all that kind of stuff, but it didn't cost us to knock stuff down. Costs us to start to make it look nice and to put it back and to be able to create the space that we're going to need for people to find life. And so we've been asking you to prepare, to pray, to think, and to sort of move stuff in such a way that you could participate with us today. We have a big goal. We've talked about $40,000, maybe $50,000, to be able to do everything that we want to do to create the space that we think we need in order to allow people to really connect and to have something that you and I frankly could be proud of, that we could look at and just be excited to invite people to, and excited to say, hey, would you come and check this out, because we think God is doing a big thing here. But here's the thing. So this is, again, I put out a video this week trying to explain this, but my point is that this is not for us. Like the promised land for the people of Israel was not just some sort of entitlement thing. It wasn't just, hey, one day I want to give you your own space where you can isolate yourself and be yourself and not have to worry about outsiders. No, the promise started with, I'm going to bless you so that you can be a blessing. And all nations on earth will be blessed through you. And so for us, we're not like, I've said in the video, and I believe this, I'm excited that we'll have a home. But guys, it's not about us. The reason that we are going to do this is because we believe that there are hundreds and thousands of people in our city who need to connect with Jesus, and that doing something like this will enable us to do that. And so we really believe that what happens is God moves his people into spaces to inhabit physical space. This is what he did with the people of Israel in the promised land. He says, come, I have a space for you, inhabit the space, and then teach the world what it looks like to follow me from that space. And so nations, surrounding nations, were learning from Israel in their good times what it looks like to follow after God wholeheartedly. And I believe for us, the same thing is happening, is that God is moving us into a physical space where we will be able to, from that point, demonstrate to the city, here's what it looks like to love and to follow Jesus. And here's the thing. I believe the neighborhoods right around that building will be better because we're there. I believe that the city as a whole will be better because Story Church will be rooted in a community. I believe, honestly, that what we will see in the future of our church, I believe that the number of fatherless kids in our city will go down. I believe that we will see marriages stick that otherwise were broken. I think we'll see people set free from debt that never would have been otherwise. I believe we'll see more young men grow up and graduate than we would have if we weren't there. I really believe this. I believe that the impact that we will have on a local community will be measured by the lives that are drastically different as a result. It won't be because, hey, look, our building's full, or because, hey, look how cool it is on the outside. It will be the families that are forever changed because a community took root right there. And so this is why it's so important for me. This is not just money. This is not just, hey, we want a cool place. We want to create the space that we believe will change lives. So we are asking you, and we've been asking you, would you participate? And today is the first day, but we're going to continue just throughout the summer. Just, if you have an opportunity, if God blesses you, would you consider passing that blessing and saying, you know what? I believe that in what this church is doing, and I think that we could reach a lot of people. I think we could really change a lot of people's lives. The band's going to come and lead us, and then after we sing, I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk a little bit about specifically what we're going to do and how we're going to do it this morning. But here's what I thought would be kind of just a good visual, something that I think would be important. Now this could totally backfire on me, so hopefully it doesn't. But here's what I'm going to ask you to do this morning. I believe, because I've heard from so many of you about the ways in which Jesus has changed your life through Story Church, that in some way, Story Church has played a role in your personal faith journey, in your marriage, in your finances, in the hope that you've experienced. Many of you have been baptized here. Your kids have been dedicated here. There have been an impact on your life. And I just want to ask you real quickly, and this is maybe a little awkward for some of you, but I just want to ask you that if God has touched your life, if you feel like today I am different than when I first came in to Story Church, I'm going to ask you to stand just for a second. Would you just stand up real quick? If God has impacted your life. Wow. Guys, look around. This is why it matters. You understand? This is not walls and paint. This is the church. And these are the lives that get changed when a church takes root in a community. And guys, I just got to tell you, I believe that for every one of you standing, there's 100 more outside who don't yet know and who haven't yet experienced. And guys, that's why we do this. We do it for that. We do it for them. And guys, we're asking you to give because that matters. Because that is what is all about. We want to help people embrace the story they were meant to live. And there's a whole lot of people out there who are lost and confused and have no idea. And guys, listen, and this is, let me help you understand that are standing here in this room. Before you came, somebody else gave. Somebody else prayed. Somebody else served. Somebody else created the environment that helped change you. And I'm telling you, the chapter 2 generation of Story Church is counting on us. It's counting on us to do what they need to create the place that will ultimately change their life, that will rescue their marriage, that will heal their relationships, that will help them find hope. So I'm asking you as the church, would you join me? Would you do whatever it takes to serve more, to give more, to pray more, to do whatever we have to do to see lives changed in our city? Because it matters. I'm going to invite all of you to stand with me and we're going to pray. The band's gonna sing, and we're just gonna celebrate what God's doing because we believe there's more to be done here in this city. And let me pray. God, we love you. We're so grateful for the lives, the people that are standing in the room, the people that have had their lives touched and changed. God, I'm personally blown away, just blown away. That you would use us in any way that would change someone, that would touch them, that would give them hope. And God, I can't help but imagine, as far as the promised land has seemed at one point, God, to see this now is unbelievable. And God, one day we're gonna stand in a room that's maybe 5 or 10 times this big with that many people standing and lives change, and it's gonna be because of this group right here. And so God, I just ask that you'll give us the boldness, the courage, God, that you'll impress this upon our hearts and our minds because God, this matters. And we believe that greater things are still to come. Thank you, as far away as it might seem, that your arm is stronger, that your arm reaches farther. And God, we trust in that this morning. We celebrate that today. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.